Hello, hello. How is everybody today? How are you? I'm Connie Foote with Foote Title Group, where we protect your home ownership. Hope you guys are having a great start to your Tuesday. I really look forward to coming on and talking to you. And, I try to talk about information that we come across that I can share with you to help you understand home ownership a little bit better, real estate process, the mortgage process, all those different pieces, and hopefully connect you with different professionals that can help you secure and make sure things are taken care of properly for you. First, let me say thanks so much for tuning in. I realize how valuable your time is, and I know we're a little bit later today than we usually are. I usually try to do Coffee with Connie on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 8 and 9, and today we're a little bit behind because we had some things going on this morning. We have a couple of really big projects that are getting ready to launch. So I thank you so much for your time, whether you're tuning in live or you're tuning in on the replay. Thanks so much. And if you're on, check in. Let me know that you're on. Let me know that you've watched the video. Let me know that you got some benefit out of it, because it helps me a lot figure out what our message is going to be. Like today, we are actually changing our message a little bit than what I advertised earlier in the morning, because something's come up this morning that I wanted to talk about with you guys. And I think it's something that happens to a lot of people. So I wanted to talk a little bit about an ownership issue. One of the things that people run across a lot is, we own our home in a certain way, and some things have changed since then. So we've talked about a lot of things, and we always continue to talk about this, this thing called tenancy, which is how you own your property with someone else, and why that matters and what happens there. And then some of the other things we talk about are estate issues. What happens if someone who owns a piece of property passes away? What happens if a couple who is married gets divorced? How does that affect home ownership? What are all those things that can change that home ownership? And what happens when I want to go to sell that piece of property? And how are these changes going to affect my ability to be able to sell that piece of property? So this morning I wanted to talk to you just for a minute, because I don't know about you guys, but I think the older I get, the more it seems common to me that we're seeing a lot more people affected by this horrible dragon called cancer. And unfortunately, it's causing a lot of people to rethink things, how they're doing things. And particularly, one of the most important things that you own, your piece of property, it's really important to make sure that all your pieces are in place, so that as things progress and when things happen, that you make sure that all the pieces that you want covered are covered in the right way. So one of the things that this brings up about is an ownership concern. So if you own a piece of property by yourself or with a spouse that maybe has passed away, and you're getting a little bit older, or maybe you've come up with an experience, maybe you've had an experience that's affected your life, that physically maybe you can't take care of things the way that you want to, or that you want to do some good planning, this is where we're going to talk about this for a second, because unfortunately, we're all going to go at some point. We all have a ticket. It's just, when's that ticket going to happen? So the most expensive piece of the most expensive item you own, you want to make sure that those pieces are in order. So not to be sad or difficult, but I just want you to think out loud about your ownership. So when you originally purchased your home, let's say you purchased it 30 years ago, and you purchased it with your wife, and 5 years ago she passed away, and now you own a piece of property by yourself, but she's still on the title, which isn't really a big deal. But you want to make sure that as you're doing some planning, that you understand, and all of anybody who you want to have an interest in that property is covered. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. You can obviously do it through estate planning purposes, and a will, and taking care of things that way. But you can also add someone to the ownership. And the reason that I recommend that you think about some of these things, in that example, now you have a person who owns a piece of property by themselves, and maybe they want it to go to their sole surviving child if something ever was to happen to them. Things happen to people every single day, so you want to make sure that you're thinking these things out loud. Maybe you don't have as much time to plan, so that's why I'm saying this. So think about your situation and what you really want to happen if something was to happen to you. So you can add that surviving or that sole child that you have, or several of your children, to the ownership of that piece of property. And then that way, if something happens to you, they depending on how you did it in the tenancy, which, there's lots of questions about that and lots of things we can talk about in detail, but they then have the power and the ability to go on immediately with that ownership without having to go through the estate process and being appointed as a personal representative and preparing documents and making sure that their ownership is properly documented. If you do a deed adding someone to that ownership, when you're doing your estate planning purposes, then those things are covered in your your planning is taken care of. So you don't have to think about what happens to that most valuable asset that you have, which is your home. So, we have a situation at the moment where a gentleman is trying to sell a property, and he did add his daughter to that piece of property. He since has become terminally ill, and if something happens to him, she can still do things with that property. Now, because she's one of the owners. So I explain all this because it doesn't mean that just because you don't have one of your children or all of your children added to the ownership, then you could, for estate planning purposes, have a will and designate where that goes. So you may be thinking, wow, if I do that, I have 2 children and maybe, I add both of them. What happens if, we get in a fight, somebody doesn't like me, whatever, and they want to kick me out of the home? Well, first of all, you have an ownership interest too, so they can't do anything without you agreeing. But there's also another legal situation that you can set up that's called a life estate, which allows you to have that ownership and be in that property and own that property as if you were the only owner for as long as you are living. And then once that changes, then they are the sole owners and they can take care of it. The other thing is, if your children are children that you're close with and you have a good relationship with, more than likely, as long as you do the tenancy properly where you all own equal percentages, and if something happens to any of you, and it may not be just an elderly thing, but if one of your children is there and God forbid had a car accident and passed, then the other 2, you and your other child, would still be surviving owners. So these are different things that, can be discussed when you decide you want to do some of this. And certainly those deeds can be prepared and recorded to make sure that ownership is all secure. So if some things in your life have changed, so maybe you're not in an older situation where your spouse has passed away, maybe you are a young person who got married, purchased a piece of property with a spouse, and you're no longer married, and the spouse has signed off on that ownership, and now you're the sole owner. Maybe you want to add a parent. Maybe you want to add a brother or sister. Maybe you don't want to add anyone. That's fine. But I say this because there's a lot of different ways that you can look at the situation to make sure that what you want to happen if something happens to you is protected. So make sure that you go through those steps and you're having these conversations, because when life changes, when you get married, you want to add your spouse to that deed. So that way, if something happens to you, that spouse doesn't have to go through a process to make sure that their ownership is protected. They don't have to go through the estate process. They don't have to go through the court system to get that taken care of. So make sure that if things in your life have changed, that you address that not only through estate planning, but maybe you want to do some things that change the ownership of that piece of property because things in your life have changed. So a lot of different things can be addressed, as I've said, depending on how your ownership has changed. And I just want to make sure that you understand there's a lot of options. Hey, Pandora, how are you today? Hey, Brian, how are you? Happy late birthday. Hope it was a great week for you. Hey, Carla, thanks for tuning in. Hey, Bob, how are you? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So I just want to take a few minutes. As I said, we originally were going to talk about some home inspections, and I'll certainly get to that. Maybe we'll do that on Thursday. But I like more to be able to talk about things that you guys are experiencing. So if we run into examples of kind of extreme situations or maybe things that you haven't thought of through our day-to-day operations, I love to share that information and maybe some thoughts that may give you some opportunity to think about things and how they could affect your life. So remember, if some things have changed in your life and you want to address that ownership of your piece of property to make sure that everybody that you want, included or not included, is taken care of, we certainly can help you answer some of those questions. Hey there, Sean, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. So please reach out and ask questions. I don't know all of the answers, as I've said before, but I know a lot of professionals that do. Some of them actually tune into our videos. They can answer questions as well. Message us and ask any of those questions that you have. Beginning of the year, we talked about things we were going to be doing at each month to bring you more information and to bring you a lot of power throughout the year, so you are educated and you feel confident when you do a home closing. And so in the beginning of January, we launched our new website, which has calculators on it. It has all kinds of resources. As a matter of fact, last night we just uploaded a whole bunch of other resources and updated some resources that are on there. If you're moving into a new area, there's a homeowners association guide. There's our welcome home guide, which is getting ready to launch, but I think you can get to it actually on our website early. There are buyer's guides, seller's guides, all kinds of information, whether you're a buyer, a seller, or a realtor. It's a lot more comprehensive and easy to find things. So check it out, www.foottetitlegroup.com. And the beginning of February, which happens to be tomorrow, we're going to be launching a brand new piece for you guys. It's going to be a great resource to help you out. So hopefully you'll tune into that. And the last thing I wanted to point out is we are doing a live interactive webinar on February 15th at 7 p.m. The 5 most frequently asked questions about home closings and purchasing real estate. So get registered. There's a link on our website. There's a link on all of our social media. There is emails been going out. There's all kinds of places that you can get registered, but you got to get registered because there's only a few spots in there left, and we want to see you on there. So hopefully you guys are having an awesome day. Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, oh, gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, hopefully it's something that we can help them out with. And remember that you have the right to choose who does your home closing. It's really important to take the time to do a little research and find out. The companies vary, and at the end of the day, your closing is an important piece, but we also protect your home ownership. So when everybody else goes away and you're living and enjoying your new home, we protect your home ownership. So I'm Connie Foote with Foote Title Group, where we do protect your home ownership. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.